Good morning. I'm Melissa Nelson with Waldorf Essentials. Today we're going to talk about what happens when you have kids that are behind. And I use the word behind in quotes in our title for a couple of reasons. One, I really don't think there's ever anybody that's behind. I think that it's something that our culture has told us is something that's really important, and I really try with my kids to start from a very early age, there not being a ton of comparison with them about somebody else. And moms will say to me, but you know, my child is talking to their friends and they're talking about school, and I go, gosh, could they talk about Pokemon or something else? Like, 'cause seriously, they don't need to talk about where they are in school. And so I really try to work on that from a very early age, this idea that we're not comparing. And this is the reason why. When you're an adult, the only people that compare themselves are really rude people, really snarky people that you don't really want to be part of anyway. I said to, I think it was my oldest daughter the other day, I said it to somebody, I can't remember which child it was. I said, really and truly, when you are a grown-up, like here I am 45 years old, nobody says to you, what level are you in math? Unless they're a complete jerk. Nobody says that to you. So when you're the age that you are, you really should be able to just say, I'm where I am, and really be confident and comfortable with the idea that you are where you are. And that really sort of try to breed that confidence into them when they're young. Now, absolutely, there are things that you struggle with, for sure. There are things I struggle with. I have kids that struggle with math a little bit. I've had kids that struggled with reading in the past, but they overcame those things, So it's about looking at those struggles and going from there. It's not about sort of making those struggles become your calling card and your identity then. So when it comes to being behind, let's talk about it in a few different aspects. So coming to Waldorf late is not being behind. That's just surveying what is. This is where I am. And we've done lots of other videos and audios about coming late, this idea of coming late. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time here talking about that. Just want to sort of illustrate that nobody is ever really late. You are where you are because that's where you're supposed to be. So if you came to Waldorf a little bit later than normal, and that's even another like sort of misnomer, because you kind of come to Waldorf when you come to it. If your kids could be 5, your kids could be 15. You come to it when you're in the right path for it. And so we work with you wherever you are when you're in that space. And so, excuse me. And so there's really no coming late in that respect. But when families do come a little bit later to Waldorf, I definitely, we talk, and I like to have a conversation about, okay, so where, especially if if they're bringing a child to Waldorf around 6th grade, I go, well, let's talk about the 5th grade stuff. I want to make sure you at least covered some of the stuff so that it's not getting history out of order. So that's like coming to Waldorf late. But when you have a child that's maybe behind in mathematics, say, I don't ever look at that as being behind. Now, you could say not at grade level. You could say marches to their own drum. We have some children like that. In fact, most people have children like that. I think that really what you want to be looking at is the individual child. So you might have a child that's in 5th grade, but their math level might be more like 3rd grade. And I say, don't sweat it. You just work with what you have. Steiner, especially with math, he said that math belonged to the gods. And I had a teacher tell me that years ago. I was trying to remember where that teacher said that it was, but it was in one of the teacher lectures, of course. And excuse me. And I've really taken that to heart, because it is something that is universal. It's the same in every language. It doesn't differentiate. It's not different. So if math is the spiritual piece, then who's to judge where you are spiritually? You're just moving right along. And as long as you move right along, then that's what matters. And that's really what we should focus on when it comes to things like being behind in math. because I feel like it's something that children feel like they get labeled on. And some people truly have a math processing disorder, and so we have to work with that in a different way. We have to look at mathematics for that child in a different way, and that's about decoding it and seeing where their struggles are, and seeing, a lot of people that have these struggles do really well with Waldorf math because it is so tactile and hands-on. Excuse me. My throat is all froggy this morning, and I'm just realizing that we forgot to turn our lighting on. Oh well. It's live video. That's what happens, and it's early in the morning here. So, when it comes to things like being behind, say, in reading, again, that's like a weird, I wouldn't use the term behind. I would say they're on their path. Now, there are going to be kids that really, really struggle because maybe they've got dyslexia going on, or maybe they've got another sort of auditory processing thing going on. And that's okay. You just work with where they are. You're walking one step at a time, and your goal is reading. So when you work with a child that's quote unquote behind, you definitely want to be evaluating. And honestly, you want to evaluate all the time. You want to evaluate all of your kids on a regular basis. And, that's really why one of the reasons why I think our planning for Peace Journal is like top notch, because we invite you to evaluate. Now, I have moms that say to me, it's so funny when they say this to me, I really wish you could just put the planner together and not put those evaluation pieces in there. And I go, oh, sorry, back up the truck, sister. Those pieces are going to be in there because you need them. You need to do the evaluations on a regular basis. I sort of sound like I'm a smoker, but I promise I'm not. My voice is just all groggy this morning. But these evaluations are golden. So you want to do an evaluation at the beginning of the school year, sort of at the end of your break, your big break, and sort of evaluate where you're going. I also do one at the beginning of my planning. So I look at, and often when you're doing it at the beginning of your planning, you're looking at your child still in the grade that they're in. That's where you should be doing it because you're planning for the next one when they're in the one that they're in. Like in April, we're going to start. So you want to be looking at them then, the first time then. So like when I look at, say, Sam, in April when we get started with this, I will be looking at sort of where he's been all school year. He's in 5th grade this year. And did he match up with our goals that we had set at the beginning of the school year? If not, how far away from those are we? And if so, did he exceed them? So that's really all I'm looking at. If he did not meet them, I'm looking at, okay, why didn't he meet them? Is it neglect on my part? Like, did I have a goal set forward that I forgot about? Or did I just not be as careful with making sure we get there? Was the goal too big? Those are the things that I look at because you're doing this evaluation on a regular basis. So when you have a child that then is maybe behind a little bit, or you think they're behind on society standards, and like I said, I'm going to submit there's no such thing as being behind. But when you have a child that is in that position, and you're really trying to, say, catch them up to what you think grade level is, so then you have to look at where they are, do a baseline of where they are. So when parents come to me and they say, my child is X, I go, well, let's do a baseline. So if they're an older child and they're struggling with writing, I will say I would have them write you a summary. A lot of kids that come from the public school system, or even private school or other homeschooling methods, don't know how to write a proper summary. So we start there. And it doesn't have to be very long, but we start there. So that would be our baseline. That's where your child is right now. This is what is. We can do the same thing with mathematics. We can do the same thing with any subject. Let's get a baseline. So once we have a baseline, then we can see that baseline, see maybe where you think they should be, or where you'd like them to be, and we can see the gap, and then we can talk about how to fill that gap and how to make the goal then over here and really take steps to get to that goal. but it is about being very, it's a concerted effort. It's not a, well, haphazard, well, hopefully they'll get there, because that's not how you get to a goal. That's a dream then. If you really have a goal, you write it down, and you talk about the measured success that you will have by making each step. And so, say for instance, with mathematics, say you have a child that is in fifth grade and they're at second or third grade mathematics. So what you do with that is you see what is, and you look at how did you get there? Do they have a math processing disorder and they're really, truly struggling? Is there one element that struggles? I mean, most of us that are not math heads have one element in math that throws them for a loop. For me, I will say, is fractions. I can do them in my head. And I've gotten so much better at them as I got older. The fact that I wrote the math book was this huge healing of math poop for me. And so, but there's usually something with math that throws somebody for a loop. So I look at that. What was that one thing that we introduced in third grade that maybe threw them for a loop, that maybe they got stuck on? And so I look at that. And if it's not something that, maybe it's something like factoring. And, you don't need to know factoring in order to know how to do division. So we might say, okay, well, there's this one piece over here you're still really struggling with that we're going to revisit. But we're going to keep moving forward on the other pieces because we can. Sequentially, it's not going to make a difference. Factoring comes up again and again, so we definitely want to heal your struggles with factoring at some point. But we can carry that along with us and touch on it here and there just to see if you're at that place ready to heal about it. When it comes to, say, being quote-unquote behind with reading, we might go, okay, let's get a baseline. Maybe you are really struggling with reading and you're a fifth grader and you're reading at about a second grade level. So how do we bridge that gap? Oftentimes with bridging that gap, I will ask parents to say, what is your child interested in? And they might tell me, horses or la 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 or Pokemon or, which that one hurts my head. But, any of those things. And so then I say, you take them to the library and you pick out a book that is above the reading level that they are now about that subject. And this is your goal book. Your goal book is the book that you're trying to work towards. And you sit down every day and you try to get to that book. And how do you do that? You go, okay, well, here's the goal. Here's where we are. So there's some other books or reading material in between here that are going to get us to this goal. Every day you have to read. Every day. Even on Sunday. Every day you have to sit down and read together. Reading especially is one of those things that you have to put everyday effort to it. And it might only be for 5 minutes. And then you're going to stretch that to 10 minutes. And then, especially if they're a 10-year-old, you're going to stretch that to 50 minutes eventually. So you really want to work on that every single day. That's how you get to the goal. And so, again, baseline, goal, and then you're working your way there. It's the same with just about anything. I can't even imagine a subject that it would not, that would not be how you do it. You have to get a baseline first. So when you think your child is struggling, get the baseline. Find out where are they actually, because often it's not as bad as we think it is. I'll have moms that'll message me and say, gosh, we unschooled and we're coming to Waldorf in third grade and we unschooled and my kids have had no reading and no math. Susie Q taught herself to read, but we've done no math. Or, I don't even know where to start. So we go back and I go, okay, well, let's take a baseline. If you've not done any math at all, then I'm going to suggest you start with math lesson number 1 in first grade. The Math Grades 1 to 5 book is a perfect book for people that are coming in and they don't know where they are with math, or they think their kids might be in a different place than they are for the age of the curriculum. The Grades 1 through 5 book has all the math for all the grades, and it's the same as what's inside the book, the curriculum books. It's just all in one place. So, and we wrote that. People will say, why did you do that? Well, we wrote that book before we did the second editions of the curriculum, and the second editions of the curriculum is where the math book or the math pieces actually were integrated. So that's why they're separate. and why the first grade one is a little bit different. So, so you want to get that book and you want to say, okay, well, we're going to start with lesson number 1 from grade 1, and we're going to plow all the way through until we get stuck. And I would say you go as fast as they are comfortable until they get stuck. And once they get stuck, and that doesn't mean they're stuck, that just means, okay, well, that's my baseline. That's where we start from. And some kids might, even if you're coming to Waldorf in 3rd grade, they might zoom all the way through. And some kids might get stuck on division or subtraction. Some kids might get, and that's one of the great reasons why we do all 4 math processes at once. And we actually are doing a video on a journey through Waldorf math in 3 weeks, I think. I think it's at the end of March. So if that's something that you're struggling with or something that you have interest in, please join us then. So when it comes to, say, reading, like I said, we do the same thing. Like I go, okay, well, let's sit down and see what you can read. Or if you can't read anything and you're coming and you're a 9-year-old, then, you know, we're going to sit down and we're going to plow through these letters. And usually, when there's no processing or dyslexia or any kind of other disorder going on, usually a child of 9 is super motivated to read because everything around them is not reading. They've got friends that are reading. Grandma's asking why they're not reading. That child is motivated to read. So it will generally happen pretty fast. Like you get them introduced to all the sounds of the letters, and then you go from there. So you wouldn't go back to the 1st grade curriculum to do that, but you would absolutely do it in a fashion that's sort of like that. So you want them to make a connection with the letters. They probably already have some sort of connection with it. I'm guessing they can write their name or something like that. And so, and then unless this child has been neglected and kept in a deep, dark dungeon, then they know that what letters are. There's stuff around them everywhere. You know, they're seeing letters on signs. They're seeing it in print. They're looking at books all the time. So they're trying to decode this. And so your job is to just really help them along. So they are likely to be quick when it comes to picking that up. And quick meaning, I bet you could do it within 3 months. And so there again, you get your baseline of, okay, well, this kid knows their ABCs and they know the letters. They know what they are. They just don't know the sounds and how to turn those sounds into words. So goal is words. Here's where your baseline is. So you just work on every single day on getting those sounds in there. And I would introduce it in the exact same way that we do the rest of the children. I would do all the consonants first and then the vowels, because then they have immediate competency with reading. Immediate. It's immediate. The very first day. The very first day they can read those short vowel sounds. And so, and if you have questions about the path to reading in Waldorf, we have a video on that we did a couple of months back. So look through the videos either here on the Facebook site or on our melissanielsen.com or waldorfessentials.com site. There's a playlist with all the videos. So I was trying to think of what else they could be behind in. Science, I'm not really concerned with anything with behindness because it's really, especially like deep science, starts in about 7th grade. So you're 6th, 7th grade. So say you've got a child that has never done any physics. Well, you just go back and do those 6th grade physics lessons. They usually have a lot of fun with those. The same with chemistry. I think you can stack a lot of those together and make up a couple of grades at a time. It's not a big deal. I'm trying to think. History is one where with being behind, so you're coming to Waldorf late and later, and you have a child that's going into 6th grade, and we sort of talked about this a little bit. You want to make sure that the history content from 5th grade, I usually tell people you want to end with Alexander the Great in 5th grade so that you can sort of start with the formation of Rome in 6th grade. So you want to be able to have that be your baseline. That's where you want to be. And so you want to, sort of fashion things around that. But really and truly, if I could impart anything to you, it is that there's no such thing as being behind. We are where we are in different stages of development, different stages of our lives, and children can easily get hung up on not being at par with their friends or their peers. And so I'm submitting to you to help them get over that, to help them illustrate and help them see that you don't compare yourself to anybody, that it is It's not fun to feel that way, and that it's not necessary to feel that way. So, I can remember back when my daughter that's 17 now, she was probably 6, I think, and it was the year that everybody else, even our homeschooling friends, were starting first grade, and she just wasn't ready. And not even, Waldorf standards are 6 going on 7 or 7, and she just wasn't. She wasn't, and I was okay with the fact that she wasn't. She was just 6. In September, she would have been like 6 and 6, or 6 and she wasn't even 6 yet. She would have been like 5 and 8 months or something like that. And so I remember about the springtime, she was probably 6 and 3 months or so. She had, I think, gotten into a conversation with a friend about reading, and how she wasn't reading, and how she was feeling kind of sad about that. And I said, well, I don't think that Susie Q knows how to play the flute. You know how to play the flute. I don't think that Susie Q knows how to knit, and you know how to knit. And we just had this real heart-to-heart about, like, what is it that we're comparing, and why? Why is that one piece so important when we have all of these other things that you can do that Susie Q can't? So how about we not make Susie Q feel bad about those things that she can't do, and you don't feel bad about the one thing that you can't do? And so we have this heart-to-heart, and I think it's very important to make those connections with your children, to sit down and listen to them, and then be able to help them form a better foundation. Now, she ended up reading a little bit later. She was in 2nd grade before it really took off. But I tell you what, she's smart as a whip, bright as can be, going to graduate a little bit early. She's got sights on graduating in December. And we're going to make that happen for her. She'll be 18 in January, and she wants to be able to start life. And I'm all for that. And so when they're older, you look back on the struggles they had when they were younger, and they're so small in comparison. And I know they're so big to them at that time, especially with the 6-year change going on and the things that go on there. But, I really believe, I have 5 children, and I really believe that I have really worked hard to not have them become part of that devil of comparison. And we sort of did a video about that last week, about what happens when we compare ourselves to other people and to other things. And I find that it's made them be very strong human beings. And they are of all temperaments. All temperaments. We have all temperaments well represented in our house. And so really it's about just giving them that piece of confidence that I have. And that is that, and I tell them on a regular basis, if somebody asks you when you are an adult what level you are in reading or math, that person is a jerk. You don't go, well, let's see, I finished math 105 when I was, you don't talk about that when you're a grown up. Nobody has ever, since I left school, and I'm not even talking about college, said to me, what's your reading level? Never. So you just sort of want to give them that piece of, like, isn't that silly? And you might joke around. I might say, hey, Daddy, what reading level are you? And have your kids sort of see how silly it sounds, because it just sounds silly. Adults don't do that to each other. And like I said, some adults that do, I go, I don't got time for you. I'm not going to sit here and give you the list of big books that I've read. That's not okay. It's not a way to have a friendship. And so it's definitely not a way to have a friendship when you're a child either. So you want to help them to sort of really focus on what it is that they do that's really well. So anyways, that's really what I wanted to talk about today. Next week, join us next week. Eric will be here with me. And we're going to talk about the horrors that come from going to the Children's Museum and why it's not a great idea. And experiences, museum experiences that are a good idea, especially when you have kids of different ages, and how can you sort of meet them all. In the homeschool world, we are often at a place where we're not there for just that one child, but we're going to talk about why, and I'm not going to say all children's museums, but most children's museums are a bad idea, and why they tend to overstimulate, and I wish they were made by parents, not by crazy people that don't have parents, or it's kind of nuts. Anyway, if you've been to a children's museum recently, or in the distant past, maybe you had a bad experience, and you said, "Oh no, I'm not going back there," then join us and give us your thoughts and opinions on that. And so, anyways, that's next week on Monday, same time, same place. So I hope you have a wonderful week. I'm Melissa Nielsen. See y'all later. Bye.